Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Bird and Goal podcast. My name is Jackie, one half of your co-host here, and this is Bird and Goal from the week seven. That is, we keep backing up just like the Cardinals do in game. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
What is up, everybody? We are back. My name is Colby. Let's get into it.
Yeah, another heartbreaking loss. Who would have thought that the Cardinals would lose to the Green Bay Packers? 27-23 in a very close game that we were both in attendance.
hmm
What was your experience like at the game?
It was good. It was majority Packer fans, like we thought it would be. Um, it was pretty loud when we were on offense. I think it was a Jacoby that said they were on the silent count after the game, which makes sense. And also, you had, kind of had them right where we wanted them, and then we let them off the hook.
Oh yeah, so to the Monday Night Meltdown. Rest in peace, Denny Green. Yeah, I was at the game with my dad, so we went out to the Great Lawn, just walked around a little bit before we went inside. And I was talking to Dad, and he said, I wish. First, he said that we're lucky that Packer fans aren't as cocky as like a Green Bay or no, I'm sorry, Seattle or a San Francisco.
Mhm.
So we knew that we weren't going to experience a lot of trouble in our seats being surrounded by Packer fans. Um, but he said, it would be nice for us to be cocky for once in a while. So we get inside. Of course, we are surrounded. Um, but it was kind of a close game for the whole thing up until the very end. So I myself was trying to get a little chippy. I actually had a Packers fan like I guess the guy was drunk, got too excited, and kind of like fell on top of me a little bit, um, like through his phone. Um, and then yeah, just a lot of chirping back and forth. But nothing too serious. But it always sucks to lose those when like the momentum's kind of shifting back and forth, but things are really kind of going your way, and we are looking a little bit better on both offense and defense. But ultimately, again, for the fifth straight week, we lose it in the fourth quarter. I think the big factor of that game for Green Bay was Micah Parsons, who we talked about last week. We weren't really concerned with him because we've got Paris Johnson, the Micah Parsons beater. And the Packers figured out really quick that, if you want to give Micah Parsons a better matchup, it's not against Paris Johnson. Again, it's against Jonah Williams.
Yeah, no, exactly. They were quick to abandon that. I think he had the one sack early from the left side where he ended up beating Paris, but after that, he had tough sledding on the left side of the offensive line. But the right side looked like a very, very fancy, brand new turnstile that we have installed on the right side of the offensive line.
Yeah, and early on, it looked promising with that matchup against Paris. I believe it was like the second play of the game. You know, Parsons goes to rush, and Paris kind of like turns him around. And I texted you, I'm like, oh, Paris Johnson is Micah Parsons' daddy. And then, yeah, it was just all kind of downhill from there as far as the offensive line goes. Another good game by Jacoby Brissett in moving the ball downfield. There was some big pass plays that us as Cardinals fans kind of miss out of this team. But ultimately, Jacoby did miss some key throws that could have potentially won you the game. Um, but nice to see Trey McBride get active.
Yeah.
2 touchdowns on the day. Um, Bam Knight had a good rushing day, and I was looking at just the stats here. Um, and this is where it gets really frustrating if you're just a box score watcher. Total offense for the Cardinals 330 yards versus the Packers 226. Um, and then I'm really looking at time of possession here. We almost had the ball for 10 more minutes than Green Bay. Our time of possession is 34 minutes and 10 seconds versus their 25 minutes and 50 seconds. And then if you're looking at individual stats going head to head, you've got Jacoby Brissett, 279 passing yards versus Jordan Love's 179. Bam Knight outrushed Josh Jacobs, who, is a force to be reckoned with in the rushing game. Bam Knight with 57 yards, Josh Jacobs with 55, and then we out received them with Trey McBride at 74 yards to Romeo Dobbs at 72. Um, that's really frustrating to have a good offensive performance on paper and to not come away with a win.
Mhm.
And we've been kind of giving the defense a little bit of grace, but it's really an issue now in 5 straight games that your defense is, not getting the key stops that they need to put teams away.
Yeah, no, you would like to see them put a team away or kind of stay out of front and not, let a team back into the game. I'd rather, unfortunately, I feel like I would rather lose close games than lose by 35 points. A lot of people are complaining online from the other side, about playing down to your competition. It's like, oh, well, you got to stop playing down to, there were some Packer fans complaining about why are you playing down to the Cardinals? And it's like, I don't think that's true. I think it's the other way. I think the Cardinals are an okay team that will play up to their competition, but for whatever reason, they just come up short every week. Well, at least for 5 weeks now, that they have missed the mark. Yeah, it's unfortunate. You win. You're all over the box score, and you're more yards, more time possession, but you have another week where it's a less than one score. You end up losing this game by.
Yeah, and it's just overall frustrating because I don't listen to the local radio other than maybe like the 2 minutes in the morning when I'm getting the car started and I'm waiting for my Bluetooth to pair so I can turn it off. So I'm not quite sure who was talking, but someone had said, I don't think the Cardinals have enough talent. And I don't agree with that. I think we do have enough talent. For me, what it all boils down to, I know there's a quote unquote QB controversy, and I know there's injuries. I think it all comes down to coaching.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just upsetting. It's frustrating. It's week in, week out.
Yeah, and you have opportunity, like I said, like we had opportunities at the very end because, you need a touchdown time. I believe we got the ball back with 58 seconds left. You got to go downfield and score. Field goal's not going to do you any good. You need touchdown. And we're not calling timeouts in key moments. And so it's the clock management stuff, it's the play calls. And I get it. This is where I will give the defense credit. Like I said, there are injuries. You've lost one of your premier cornerbacks. Um, but the soft zone is frustrating. We're not getting enough pressure for this revamped D line, and of course Walter Nolan's hasn't seen the field yet. Darius Robinson has been, we'll say it's been a disappointment thus far. Is there time to turn it around? Of course. But you would just hope that we were getting more pressures, and there was at one point, especially in the first half, where Jordan Love had all day to throw the ball, and that's disgusting.
Yeah, you definitely feel that the front and the pressure that we're getting is coming up just a day late, a dollar short for sure. They're not getting home. There is pressure. I know Darius Robinson had 3 last week or this past week, which was the first time in a game that he's had more than one pressure. So I know a lot of folks don't look at it and they're like, oh, why isn't he getting 4 sacks a game? But the pressure still make an impact. Dalvin Tomlinson was getting some pressure up the middle. I don't know if everyone saw the mic'd up, but every other Packer player, every other play was complimenting Dalvin Tomlinson for being a handful. So it's just stuff that we don't see. You snap the ball, you're watching the quarterback, you're mad that no one gets there, and you're not kind of dialed in on just watching the line of scrimmage. So I feel like we lose that as more so like common football fans. But yeah, I'm hopeful that Walter Nolan here, given the bye week, is able to come back and is able to maybe kind of have an immediate impact, or at least have a couple of, maybe a tackle for loss, or, maybe he gets a sack or a batted ball, a couple of those against Dak Monday night. And, everyone kind of was like, a big collective sigh of relief that like, okay, maybe, 1 out of 2 ain't bad, but instead of going 0 for 2. But I think that I get it if you get the ball back with like a minute and 50 and you go 3 and out and you punt the ball right back to them and everyone can be like, oh man, the defense. But, the offense did move the ball on that last drive. They got the ball back with a minute and 50 seconds. Green Bay had a penalty on the kickoff. So, you didn't really have to go far. And they kind of just moved down the field really easy. So I wasn't too worried that it was going to be one of these like, oh, shoot, we're going to need like a couple of big 30-yard pass plays to get into field goal range. Well, we had to score a touchdown, but, to get into the red zone to get a couple looks at it. I do agree with you that it felt like it was a little mismanaged clock-wise. We had 2 timeouts at that point, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
But you definitely, that allows you to maybe run once or twice, but you can't take sacks because, now you're trying to get back up to the line and spike the ball, and it's just chaos.
Yeah. And, this is, where I'm tired of the whole QB controversy thing. It's like, those were some layup of throws that were missed, in my opinion. And then it doesn't matter who's at quarterback. That offensive line is absolutely atrocious. And, everybody now can victory lap the fact that, they were concerned about or criticized Monty for not addressing that and thinking like this wasn't enough to go into the season with. And I would have to agree now that, not enough was addressed. The only bright spot is that, Paris Johnson is your franchise left tackle of the future, but everybody else is just getting worked.
Yeah. I know Yoda Froholt, he had a rough day. The Green Bay front is pretty good. They're not like, a lower talented group in the league. It's not just Micah Parsons. They have Quay Walker over there who was having a good game as well. And, they were moving Micah around the offensive or the defensive line as well. He wasn't just a pure outside, pass rusher this past week against us. He was lined up as a 3-tech. There were a couple of plays where, he beat a guard. And, the guards, I think, collectively have not played good for the Cardinals this season. I know between Isaiah Adams, who's now been benched for Will Hernandez, and Evan Brown has struggled. So I definitely feel like the interior of the offensive line has not had a good week and a half or so. Maybe here with another week of getting everybody together, maybe it starts looking a little bit better. But yeah, if your name's not Paris Johnson, you got some work to do. And even Paris will say he's got work to do. So
yeah, that I want to circle back because you brought up Dalvin Tomlinson, and look at Josh Jacobs. Total rushing yards of the day, it's 55. Yeah, just to be just a run stopper, you're not going to put up the sexiest tape and you're not going to exactly jump off a stat sheet. But everyone's talking about Monty Ossenfort, if he's on the hot seat, has he done enough? And, people are saying that he didn't make any like good additions as far as like free agency goes. But, that is a bright spot of his resume was that pickup. But it looking at it, it has been rough with the Bilal Nichols. That doll jumps off the top of my head. But the drafting has been there. The development has been good, and that's credit to the coaching staff. But for me, my biggest if I want to point the fingers and say these people need to go, it's the front office.
Interesting. Yeah, looking like you said, I was going to message in our group chat in there late in the fourth quarter. I was like, wow, Josh Jacobs hasn't really done anything today. I know he was still kind of not 100%, so you saw a lot of Emmanuel Wilson. I think he ended up getting like just about 50% of the snaps for Josh Jacobs. But looking at it, the last drive, just eyeballing it, Josh Jacobs, yeah, he scored the 1-yard touchdown, but he had about 25 yards rushing on that drive. And like you said earlier, he finished the day with 55. So going into, the last drive, that Green Bay's offense was on the field, he only had 30 yards rushing against the Cardinals in 3 quarters, basically, or 3.5 quarters. So, that's nice to see because the week prior, Jonathan Taylor and Indy ran all over this defense. So it was definitely nice to see them kind of like not get taken to the woodshed against another top 10 running back in the NFL this past week. we're going to have another good running game come, in 2 weeks when we play Dallas. But Javonte Williams is not Jonathan Taylor or Josh Jacobs. So, maybe a little bit of a break, but the offense is still humming pretty good in Dallas. So we'll have our hands full.
And how much do you want to accredit that to Clayton Adams?
If you look at the numbers, if you look at the rushing numbers, the Cowboys are the 13th ranked run offense in the league this season. If you look at it just a little bit further down, at 17th in rushing offense is the Arizona Cardinals. They're averaging about 120 yards a game, and we're sitting at about 110. So is Clayton Adams getting you 10 more yards a game? Is that making you world beaters? Probably not. What is making their offense look a little bit better is they have a passing game in Dallas. Dak Prescott has looked like, if not, the best quarterback in the league. He's definitely been up there in top 3 so far this season. So it's a balanced offense, and what a wonder it does for your run game when you have to worry about a quarterback beating you with George Pickens. And, I know he's been hurt, but CeeDee Lamb has also, been pretty good. And your fantasy pickup.
Ferguson.
Yeah. The tight end as well. They've got plenty of guys there, and they will beat you if you leave them one-on-one. So maybe that's up. I've not looked. I've not seen if Dallas is running up against lighter boxes. So maybe Javonte has some more success. It's 6-on-5, and Javonte can make the first guy miss, or they're setting them up with the better successful plays. But it's not like Dallas is the best rushing team by miles. It's 12 yards. So I don't know if that's where all our causes are. I think it's the lack of a balanced offense. We can't run, so the play action doesn't work. It worked a couple weeks. Jacoby was able to move the ball downfield, which was nice to see. Over 2 games, Jacoby had 600 yards passing, and he also ran for another 45 yards. I think I'd be pretty happy with that if my quarterback is averaging, 320 all-purpose yards a game with a couple of touchdowns. Sign me up. That's what Dak's been doing. So I think the expectation, needs to be higher on Kyler to help them be a balanced offense so that we have more success on the ground.
Right. And that I know he probably will tell you that he doesn't listen to the outside noise, but who does listen to outside noises? NFL dads. NFL dads will be on Twitter. They're all over, watching all the local media, national media. They keep in touch with these sort of things, and he's got a very close relationship with his dad. Dad's in his ear saying, "This is what the streets are saying." It's all on you, because it's undeniable that Jacoby Brissett, as it stands, is a better fit in what they're trying to do in this offense. Stand in the pocket and throw. Go through your, progressions. Your first read's gone. Look for your second and third. Stand in the pocket. If you get hit, you get hit. And I don't think that's Kyler's strong suit. It's more of just, I've got my legs. I can bail out of this pocket. I can pick up yards on my own, or I can roll out. And if I can find someone open and throw, I can throw. He's very good on the rollouts, but it is undeniable that, we have looked better and we have more explosive plays. And it's also funny too, because Kyler necessarily hasn't been playing terrible when he was playing, outside of, the boneheaded mistakes, which Jacoby had some boneheaded mistakes. He did turn the ball over. He missed a wide open Marvin Harrison. But, it's just more pleasing to the eye to see, 3rd and long, we're throwing downfield, we're actually picking up a first, versus the dink and dunk, take your check down, pick up the extra yardage on your legs.
Mm-hmm.
So, there is, give and take with the talent level. But, I don't think Kyler has played terrible enough to warrant getting benched, because at the end of the day, results are still the same. We've lost both games with Jacoby.
Right. And it wasn't ever going to be oh man, now we got to bench Kyler decision from the front office. But it was more of if Kyler is the number 1 pick that he, that they selected him to be, and he is, this very nicely, handsomely paid quarterback, you need to go win games. At the end of the day, it's got to be you that goes and wins the game. Right now, Drake May is completing 90% of his passes and the Patriots are winning games. Daniel Jones looks like a completely different Daniel Jones and has the Colts offense, one of the most efficient offenses in this century, in the last 25 years. They're like in the top 6. They are taking care of their teams. Look what Baker's doing. Baker's an MVP candidate right now, and every one of his starting 3 wide receivers are just tagging each other out on who's going to go sit on the bench or on the IR for a couple of weeks. Like, at the end of the day, an NFL team rolls with their quarterback, and yeah, you can say, yeah, he's been playing good. He's not really been costing in the game. It's like, yeah, but make that one last play. Deliver that last touchdown strike. The Elijah Higgins touchdown where he slings that ball and turns around and hit the little Steph Curry celebration before the pass is even completed. Like, I need that play once or twice, and this Cardinal team has a couple more wins in their back pocket instead of, oh man, maybe it'll look different with Jacoby, because it did look a little bit different with Jacoby, but now we got to see if Kyler can come in there and do something, or does the offense regress back to looking stagnant, nothing downfield, and we lose a game that the Dallas defense will let you be in the game the whole game.
Right. And you got to really trust your receivers too, outside of just Marvin Harrison, who did show a little bit of a regression last game. There was a, kind of what we thought was a interception, which he never had possession of when it was, the ruling on the field was overturned. And then I believe he had like another drop on the sideline. So, he's still working through his confidence issues. But Michael Wilson has been looking really solid as a number 2. And, going into this year, you and I both question whether he was a viable number 2. And then, everybody, Zay Jones was like MIA last year, didn't really make a play, kind of a head scratcher as to why we brought him back. But he's really shown that, he can be productive in this offense as well. You just got to give these guys a chance.
Yeah, and the last 2 weeks, Zay Jones has had 10 targets. The rest of the year, he's had 6 targets. So in 2 weeks, we've been able to spread the ball around a little bit more, and you've gotten these guys involved. No one's kind of, the murmurs of, oh, we really need a number 2 wide receiver have kind of tuned down a little bit. It's not as loud as it used to be. People have seen, Zay Jones the last 2 games has 140 yards receiving, and what has he got? He's got 7 catches and 6 of them are for first down. Like, what more do you want from essentially your third option in this offense behind Trey McBride, who had 2 touchdowns, shout out Trey, and Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, if I told you our third wide receiver has had 120 yards and 6 first downs, you're going to be like, okay, so why is everyone complaining? So I think they've done a good job on quelling that concern.
Yeah. Real quick before we get into anything else, because we got some people in the chat, and I do apologize. I'm a little behind tonight on shouting you guys out. Shout out Silverwolf, of course, Papa Joe, always popping in and showing us love. Grandizer, we appreciate you giving the shout outs, doing what you do in the chat. Lorenzo, hello Lorenzo, how are you tonight? Silverwolf says Father Time caught up with the O-line and Connor automatically made them look better. And then Lorenzo says Father Time ran laps around Jonah. We will need to replace him. Mm-hmm. Father Time and Micah Parsons ran laps around Jonah. So, yes, I think the number 1 priority going into next year is revamping this O-line. And I think Monty will kind of attack it the way he attacked this D-line.
Yeah, I think everybody knows and sees the writing on the wall that offensive line is going to be the biggest area of concern going into the draft and free agency.
For sure. Now, I do want to ask, because it's growing louder and louder every week with JG being on the hot seat. How do you feel about JG?
I am neutral. I don't think they will make any move at this time. I don't think they'll make an in-season move. Like, for him, they may make an in-season move for coordinators, but I don't think they will, because I know a lot of people were grumbling about Drew Pensing, but the last 2 weeks, the offense has been able to move the ball. So I don't think it is a Drew thing. I think it's a collective Drew and Kyler don't work. But at this point, I don't see them firing JG or moving on in the offseason. I think he'll be here for the rest of this season and at least the start of next year.
Okay. I don't think that we'll make any in-season changes, but it's based off of what our record is going at the end of the year. But it's no secret that we have grossly regressed from last year. Last year we headed into the bye, with at the top of the division, playoffs on the mind, and now we're in October and we're already thinking about draft position.
Mm-hmm.
Gannon was not a promoted within hire, and we know that Bidwell has had a history of kind of keeping people in-house, giving out promotions, and letting those people that he's known for a while kind of overstay their welcome. So I really think that if we don't come out at least 500 to end the year, Gannon's done.
Yeah, I don't know if Micah will be the one to pay multiple head coaches. So I think that will also factor into the decision while they're still paying Cliff. I think that will factor into if they show JG the door here at the end of the season, if they are sub 500.
But as it stands now, I'm not sold. I'm out. Yeah, like I said earlier, great for development, and yeah, you turn the culture around a little bit, but there's nothing inspiring about your coaching. There's a lot of mismanagement in situations, and there's no real accountability when it comes to your coordinators. And if you want to fall on the sword for him, cool, but at some point you've got to start trying to fire up this team or inspire any sort of hope, and it's just not there. It's the same old coach speech, coach jargon every week.
Yeah.
And it's just very, stoic on the sidelines. And it just does inspire a lot of confidence if you do give them another year that will go somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Those are fair concerns.
And then, I'm not a fan of Petzing, but, if you were to give Petzing another shot, you do need to make a change at quarterback because, yeah, like you said, it's just not a good fit. You're not you're not tailoring your offense, or at least trying to highlight any of your quarterbacks, strengths. And the offense is just boring.
Yeah.
And predictable.
I feel like it has been the first 5 weeks. The last 2 weeks, I feel like we've been able to at least look like an NFL offense.
Yeah, because you're now starting to pass the ball, but your hand has kind of been forced because we're down to Bam Knight as our running back one and Michael Carter.
Mm-hmm.
What's up, Marcos? He says, I'm afraid any coach we get is going to do the coach speak. I feel that they can't be themselves under Michael Bidwell. He's too controlling.
And I wouldn't even say it's just Michael Bidwell. I think it's a lot of that's just how the league is. You don't see a lot of coaches complaining about the team. It's a quick way to lose the locker room. So I don't think it's just all Michael Bidwell, but I'm sure that is also a factor in watching where we step or what we say. But I don't think anyone's going to be mad in the Michael Bidwell department if JG comes out and says yeah, no, the execution was poor. I don't think Michael Bidwell's going to be knocking on the door and being like, why would you say that? I think it's more of a protecting the players and not throwing them under the bus and losing the locker room or having the locker room turn sour on you. Because once that happens, then you'll have to move on from JG earlier than you want to, if you even want to in the first place.
And I also feel like, we're in a new era of coaches. You're not a lot of Sean Paytons on the market. There's not a lot of Andy Reid's on the market that have been in the league for, 30 plus years or so. These are younger guys that were coordinators that are now in a first time head coaching position that they don't have a leg to stand on when it comes to I can say this because I have respect and I have a resume behind me sort of thing.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword of the Sean McVay effect of everyone's now looking for the next hotshot, up and coming, offensive-minded OC to be your head coach, and it's like, okay, you're 30. Like it's a little awkward. It's like a guy. I could be. I could run into him in the bar at Old Town, but he's also on the sidelines being the head coach of my football team next week. It's a weird atmosphere now. It's not all these old heads that have been, like the Tom Moores who have been in the NFL for 60 years, and the Bruce Arians, and like you mentioned, Andy Reid's. Like, there are not those guys anymore. Those defensive, long time coaches have stuck around, but they've been coordinators. They've not moved into this. No one's going out there and hiring, the old guy anymore. It's kind of like, what's the new kid on the block? What was the fanciest offense last year? Let's go make him our guy.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to, knock on the door of 80-something-year-old Tom Coughlin and be like, hey, do you want to run it back with the Arizona Cardinals?
Right. We need an edge. We need someone to chew their ass out. Come on, Tom, and he's not ready to be out there anymore.
Like, yeah, let me put my dentures in and I'll get back to you. Sort of.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just want a there. I'm sure there's no Dan Campbell's just walking the streets ready to be a head coach, but that's essentially kind of what you want. Just someone that can light a fire under, this team. Because, you came in strong with, I want killers and I want fire in your gut and take the bus. And then now, pew, pew, pew.
The
But
Rondell
now
Moore.
in adversity is just, you're just kind of stoic in your your pressers. You're just kind of looking down, and
But the team hasn't quit.
you're right. And that, that's another thing too. It's just like, I'm just being pessimistic because I feel like this is the big issue. But if you want to look at it from the opposite side of the coin, you're right. The team has not quit. There's no grumblings in the locker room. There's no, um, cryptic kind of comments amongst players or on social media about, there's no smoke, so there's no fire.
Yeah, I mean, look at this. The last 2 weeks of the season, with our backup quarterback, we have lost by 4 points to the number one seed in the AFC, the 6-1 Colts with the best record in the NFL, and you've lost to the 5-1-1 or 4-1-1 number one seed in the NFC, Green Bay Packers. Like, if this team was done, if this team didn't, has already checked out and they don't care about JG anymore, I think those scores would not look like that. I think, maybe they go out there and lose by 2 scores, not have a 10-point lead against Green Bay going into halftime, or the Colts having to score, 15 unanswered in the fourth quarter just to come back and beat, the Cardinals. So I think that kind of is, one shining light, if you will.
Yeah, it's just I'm looking at a comparison within the rest of the NFC West, where obviously McVay and Shanahan have been around for a while and they have a lot of success. No Super Bowl for San Francisco, but LA is about 5 years, 4 years removed, 2 years removed, no, 3, something like that, removed from a Super Bowl. Seattle has seemed to have found, a winning culture with McDonald, whatever his name is, Mike McDonald. I get him and McDaniel mixed up.
Yeah.
And then just here we are, us and JG. But I just wanted to highlight the coaching, Mikey's comment here about an ass kicker for a head coach with a strong personality who cares about winning. That's what kind of inspired my thought process behind that question about, what do we feel about JG?
Mm-hmm.
It's just very disappointing. I had seen a TikTok prior to the season starting, 49ers fans saying that, Cardinals are be a 5-win team. Niners are going to win the division. And with all the turnover in San Francisco and, all the additions that we had, I'm like, and I sent to you, I'm like, absolutely no shot that we're just a 5-win team and then San Francisco is going to win the division.
Mm-hmm.
Now everybody's tied, 5-2, and here we are 2-5.
Yeah, you're behind the 8 ball now, and you still have 2 games against the Rams as well.
Yep, 2 games against the Rams and another game against Seattle and San Francisco. We are at the tougher part of our schedule. And those teams that we wrote off at the beginning of the year, the Jags, even the Colts, we chalk those up as wins, and those won't be easy.
No.
But I have not hit rock bottom, but I know we have continuously dug ourselves in a deeper hole by winning or losing 5 straight. And it's like, you could easily be 7-0. You could also easily be 0-7 because, you could say that those first 2 wins were a little fraudulent given that, those are some of the worst teams that we managed to let hang around.
Right. I mean, I don't know if you can call the Panthers bad anymore. They have 4 wins.
They beat the Cowboys, didn't they?
They did. They won again last week. They beat the Jets.
And it's all about how you can turn your season around adversity. But I've seen this movie before. I know how this ends. We haven't been the team to defy the odds and beat adversity outside of our 2008 Super Bowl run.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm still very optimistic about this Cowboys game, maybe because I will be in attendance. I have a pretty good record on being on the road with my one win against Miami. That was my one road game that I've been on. But, the Cowboys defense, is not very good, has given up a lot of points. We will have a hopefully rejuvenated Kyler Murray. Maybe Walter Nolan makes an appearance. So,
yeah, no, there is an opportunity to be had against the Dallas defense. So hopefully Kyler back home in Texas playing in the stadium. We all know the record. He seems to get up for this game. And so hopefully that'll kind of, he can capitalize on the opportunity at hand to help us end this losing streak. And on primetime television will also be nice to, maybe we'll get some roses, but I'm sure it'll all be about how the Cowboys lost to the worst team in the league or something like that.
Yeah, no, this is going to be a funny game because it's going to be what the national media is saying. Oh, typical Cowboys, like this is where it starts to go south and yada, 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 which I'm okay with. I welcome all the Cowboy slander. Marco says, hate to say it, but we're now past the halfway point. It's not possible to go on a winning streak.
We're not past. That's what he said.
And then he has going with the Bird Gang travel. Nope. Colby has some accommodations, some friends letting us stay. We scored some nice club level tickets. I've got a sister in Dallas as well we're going to visit. And then I found a really good deal on flights. So it'll just be a nice little vacation. And then we can come home and crash out if we lose. Because that, to me, like that, every time we play the Cowboys, that's the one I circle on my personal calendar because I know, like, that's the one team I hate the most. And it feels the best to win. So if we don't win another game outside of Dallas, I can hang my hat on the season that at least we beat Dallas.
That's it. That's where it is. If it's a rough season, we're at least happy.
Yeah. I feel that way, like any division game, like I'm happy to win. But as long as we beat Dallas, we can win one game. If we just win one game, it just has to be against Dallas.
Well, the good news is in the last 18 years, they have beaten us one time.
Monday Night Football?
Was that Monday Night Football?
2018?
2017.
17. I was there. You were also there too, but we did not know each other at the time.
That's the only game. So they are 1-7 against us since 2008.
I like those odds. So here's to hoping that we beat Dallas. But we will not lose this Sunday because we will be on a bye. So we'll probably brainstorm a little bit here in these next few days on what we're going to do for next week's episode. Maybe we'll collab with some people. I know Joe had mentioned maybe doing something with his TCR lives. So we'll see. But I have nothing else on the docket. I knew this was going to be a shorter episode. And I know we're all just kind of just coping right now that our season's probably lost.
Back in the same rut that we always seem to find ourselves in as Cardinal fans for the last, 24 years that I've been around, give or take a couple of weird outlier successful seasons. But yeah, you can't blow a fourth quarter lead or give up that fourth quarter drive by your defense if you don't have a football game this week. So, my one coworker joked with me and said, he said, "Who do you play this week?" And I said, "Oh, we're on the bye." And he goes, "Oh, might be a tough one. Don't know if you guys are going to pull this one out." And I said, "Isn't that the truth?" My only last thing I have is there was a cut down for the Hall of Fame voting. So I'm not sure if everyone saw this yet, but the Hall of Fame did their first cut down to 52 members. So the final 52 in the next couple of months, they will make the cut down. I'm not sure if this is the final cut down to the class of 2025, or I guess that would be the class of 2026. But yeah, we've got 5 Cardinals on there. Simeon Rice, Anquan Bolden, the short stay John Abraham, Terrell Suggs, and Larry Fitzgerald, obviously. The senior list was Otis Anderson. So there's a bunch of Cardinals all up and down this 52-man cut down for the Hall of Fame. So exciting. Hopefully Fitz gets in there. First ballot will be cool. Maybe we'll get the nod and we'll get the Hall of Fame game. That would be also cool to go to Canton. So we'll see here in the next couple months if Fitz gets the call.
Yeah, real quick before we head out, I want to thank everybody. Grandizer had a question that he asked us last week, and despite the loss, stock up, stock down players. Rookie watch.
Stock up. We're gonna go with Trey McBride. He looks good. He looks back. He's scoring touchdowns. As many touchdowns now with Jacoby as Kyler. So that's another stirring the pot moment there, if you will. What else do I have for ups? Paris Johnson. The Arizona Cardinals have a franchise left tackle. Don't have to worry about that for another 8 seasons. Another stock up, Bam Knight. I've liked what I've seen from Bam Knight these last 2 weeks in the extended opportunity and the extended role he's gotten in this offense.
I would have to agree with all those stock ups, and I will also throw in Dalvin Tomlinson because the unsung hero doesn't pop off on a stat sheet, but kept Josh Jacobs in check. Another stock up, I'm gonna go with Zay Jones. There was some talks by some unnamed Twitter personality saying that we should cut him. This was last week. And then since that was tweeted, he actually came up with some very crucial catches and has panned out pretty nicely, as well as Michael Wilson.
Yep.
Stock down.
You lead us off on stock down.
I mean, the obvious Jonah Williams, stock down, blast him into the sun. Michael Carter, stock down. Obviously Bam Knight's going to need a little bit of a rest, but it's like, the few runs that Michael Carter had just kind of went nowhere. And I really liked what I see out of Bam over him.
Yeah, no, I think my stock down would probably be every offensive lineman not named Paris Johnson. So that room has looked rough. I think that's fair. Stock down. Oh, man. What else do we have for stock down? No, I don't have much more stock downs at the moment. A lot of stock neutrals, but not too many stock downs.
I guess you could say a stock neutral, and this is a controversial take, but I said that he's going to look human at some point, and Will Johnson did have some holds this game, a little frustrating. I know Max Melton's kind of been getting thrown to the fire a little bit, but he's he has been hanging in there tough, so I appreciate the effort and what I've been seeing out of Max Melton. And I guess you could have kind of group my Will Johnson take with my rookie watch, and then of course Walter Nolan. We'll see where I'm confident he's going to play against Dallas. I just don't know if it's going to be on a snap count.
Yeah, well, yeah, our Walter watch, not our rookie watch, since we're still waiting for him to get on the field. But yes, he will have to be activated before the Cowboy game. We do know that they have opened his window. So that is 21 days. If he does not play the Dallas game, we will not see Walter Nolan for the 2025 season. So fingers crossed.
All right. So with all that, I appreciate the question, Grandizer. That's a fun one. Maybe we'll kind of hang on to that, make it a permanent segment here. But appreciate everybody stopping by. Marcos, Mikey, Desert Cardinal, Silver Wolf, Lorenzo was in here for a minute. Appreciate you all for tuning in. I hope that by the next time you guys see us, will be next week, and we won't have a game to talk about. But after the Cowboys game, we have something fun to talk about. But as always, this has been another fun episode of the Bird and Goal podcast. My name is Jackie. You can find me on Twitter at jsandiego. That's with 2 O's.
And my name is Colby. You can find me on Twitter at BrownC74, as well as giving the pod a follow at Bird and Goal.
And we are out. Good night, everybody.